Roadhouse is the poster child for highish mid-tier 80s Hollywood action. This is no Die Hard, but given the era it was made, it's not half bad for a Billy Badass flick. However, those were my initial thoughts before I went back to watch it again for the sake of this video. Now, I will say anyone much younger than me will find this film laughable regarding the aesthetics, production, and feel. But hey, all the broody quote unquote edgy movies you fetuses champion nowadays, you have its roots in this. Also, the late Patrick Swayze was not exactly anything you could call a guy's movie actor, as loaded as that may sound. And looking back, it's pretty evident that Roadhouse was expected to be a draw for women as well, in a manner that something like The Terminator or Die Hard was not. Of all the movies from that era I figured would get a remake, this was not on my list. But my bottom shelf liquor riddled brain was obviously wrong about this one, so here we are. When I first saw the trailer for the new Roadhouse and Jake Gyllenhaal's slap fight scene, what in the holy fuck is the first thing that popped in my mind? I don't think it's a hot take for me to say I generally have a problem with remakes of previously successful films, with my latest private gripe being about The New Color Purple. But that's because, in my opinion, the original is a classic that should stand alone. It was the first real drama I remember enjoying as a kid and appreciating as cinema, and I have to say it was pretty eye-opening. Even if it is a film about the Black experience in the early 1900s South, directed by the Jesus of white directors. And it did get a lot of criticism about that and the fact that it softens the book a lot, while at the same time reinforcing negative stereotypes about Black men and domestic violence. Now, I had a couple of jokes written, but y'all motherfuckers ain't about to roast me alive for that shit. But getting back to Roadhouse, there's not as much to get upset about because it's just a typical 80s action flick. And like any action flick, it's full of a lot of stuff any critical film watcher will have to overlook. Not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but don't expect Citizen Kane. Before the trailer for the Roadhouse remake came out, I was toying with the idea of doing a video series called Nostalgia Glasses, where I go back and look at older popular movies to see how they hold up today. But I got sidetracked with the film I was going to use for the first of this series, and the video that I was working on at the time is going to take longer than I thought. So with the new Roadhouse coming out hopefully no later than a month after this video comes out, I figured doing a review of the old one would serve multiple purposes. So here we go. The film opens with a scene of a packed nightclub where we see Swayze's character dealing with a guy who cuts him, but he shrugs it off like he just got a blowjob from a truck stop hooker. Then we see him stitching himself up trying to look like a badass, so you can ignore the lack of real initial for the overall plot. And I'm quickly reminded of the dumbass nature of a kid that's never seen shit, because I'm immediately ashamed to admit that I ever saw merit in this movie. To sum up the plot, Swayze's character Dalton is a well-known cooler, which is a head bouncer. And to this day, this film is the only time I've ever heard that term used. He gets recruited by the owner of some bullshit club in some bullshit town out in the middle of East Who Gives a Fuck. As you would expect, this bullshit club is a den of iniquity with drug dealing, bartenders skimming off the top, and the current bouncers either being just lazy or as violent as the jagoffs that hang out there. So Dalton sets himself to fire all the riffraff that's working there and retrain the ones that stay, and to demonstrate his badassery. But the thieving bartender's related to the richest guy in East Who Gives a Fuck, who just also happens to be a huge douche canoe himself. This guy tries to recruit Dalton himself, but Dalton smells the douche canoe on him and immediately turns him down. This pisses the bad guy off, especially because now the bullshit club is the place to be in the greater East Who Gives a Fuck area. And the local hottish for the 80s doctor is now sweet on Dalton, but she used to be Mr. Dickhead's piece of ass. I'm halfway through this flick, and I'm definitely regretting taking on this endeavor. There's a lone samurai that's come to a village terrorized by a bunch of bandits element to this film, but it's pretty whitewashed, and that's me being kind. There's also a real D-baggy residue to this movie, and it feels a bit like a trailer park meth addict. And I have one phrase to describe the fight scenes: dog shit taco. Oh, yeah, and you get to see the top of Sam Elliott's pubes. So there's that. But I will say there is a respectable amount of gratuitous titty shots, something you will never find in American film again. Getting back to the plot. Now, Mr. Douche Canoe's been shaking down all the local business owners, and a combination of that and Dude's jealousy over Dr. Perky Boobs causes him and his goons to go on a rampage, blowing buildings up and doing stupid shit like tearing through a car dealership with a monster truck, all in an effort to get Dalton to leave town. This all culminates into a third act sequence where Dalton kills one of the goons in self-defense. Dalton's mentor, played by Sam Elliott, then gets killed. Then Dalton has a showdown, taking out all the goons who are armed with shotguns while he's empty handed. Then the bad guy himself, who can't seem to figure out how to use the pointy end of a spear. This ends with the local business owners killing Mr. Douche Canoe themselves, who does the typical 80s movies death flail, and a final scene of Dalton and Dr. Perky Boobs skinny dipping in a pond. This movie walks the fine line between dumb and generic, and yet it does make me somewhat want to watch the new one just so I can see how it matches up in butt fuckery. But I seriously doubt that's ever going to happen. So that's Roadhouse. And I have to give it a rating of not enough booze in the world to justify another watch. Take that to heart if you ever considered using this film to waste a couple hours of your time.